All right, and welcome everybody to today's episode of Sports Business Insider. I am Denzel Snipes, and this is my partner in crime, Sean Russi, former MLB and NFL agent. And before we get started, we got a pretty great show for you guys today. Um, we would like for you all to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, and LinkedIn as well. If you are catching us on one of these platforms, please hit the follow button on Facebook. If you're on Instagram, follow. On X, follow, of course. On YouTube, like and subscribe as well. And then here comes a list of shows for you that we got going on. We got the Sideline Sports Show, bringing that heat for you. That's Tuesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm producing the show. You got your host, JB Ellis. You got commentators Dave DeRocher and John Shear, and the best odds maker that money can buy. You know what? Money can't buy because we're not selling them, okay? Rafael Esparza. So tune in for his takes every week on different betting odds, on the different topics that we may have on the show. But the guy's got betting odds for everything, like even WWE. It's crazy. But definitely check us out on Tuesdays. Also, speaking of David DeRocher, we got Top Rope Talk Mondays at Oh, excuse me, that's not David Rocher. That's me. Top Rope Talk Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sideline Sports Network. It is the hottest pro wrestling show on the network. We actually didn't have a show on Monday, but we will be back on Tuesday to cover the Money in the Bank qualifying matches that are going on, all leading up to 2024 Money in the Bank. And as that show, the PLE Money in the Bank, as that approaches, we're gonna be doing a prediction show, preview show of the event. We'll perhaps have Rafael Esparza on to give betting odds once again for who's supposed to who Vegas thinks is going to win and such. But yes, Top Rope Talk Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, speaking of Dave DeRocher, our dear friend Davey, Hawk Talk with Dave DeRocher and the Legion of Boom's own Walter Thurman III, Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Sideline Sports Network. Seattle Seahawks centric show. They also discuss a little bit of news around the NFL as well. They love to have Seahawk former Seahawks players. And also some fans and supporters who come and guest on the show. A Hall of Famer, a wide receiver, Steve Largent, has been on the show to kind of give you an idea of the kind of connections that our guys have back there. And then also, last but not least, is that it? Uh, huh. Well, that was it. Well, no, we also have the Gauntlet on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As of right now, we're taking a bit of a break because news is just kind of slow for the NFL, now. And then not only that, but some of us guys needed a break. But we will be back right around training camp time, maybe even Hall of Fame game time to be back in full swing. So the Gauntlet, but feel free to go to my YouTube. That is Denzel Snipes 13 and James Tatum 12 on YouTube to catch some old episodes and to give you a kind of a feeling of how the vibe is on that show. It's myself, it's Tyler Ingram, it's JJ Jenkins, James Tatum, and Dom DeRubius, and we're bringing the heat for you. So we will be back in August. That is the Gauntlet. Now, I'm being so long-winded here. Sean, let's get down to business, man.
How's everything going, boss?
Doing pretty good, pretty good. So first up is quarterback Trevor Lawrence got the biggity bag. Just last week, he signs a 5-year, $275 million deal, $200 million guaranteed. The $55 million annual is tied with Joe Burrow for the highest average in the NFL. So passing the mic on to you and to kind of give myself a break from talking. Take it away. Give us some details, if you will, on Trevor Lawrence's new contract. I came across him during Super Bowl week. He actually was pretty cool. He was in passing. And I saw him, and he was walking with his girlfriend. I assume that was his girlfriend. And I was like, T-Law, and I threw him the deuce, and he threw me the peace sign back. And John was like, how are you seeing these guys? And I was like, well, Trevor Lawrence is like 6'6". He's kind of hard to miss,
With the long hair, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He was just this tall ass Fabio, like walking in between the casino machines. Like, how could you miss him? But yeah, if you can give us details of his contract, if you will.
Yeah, we'll give you a little bit of a breather. But yeah, so we'll go over some of these details, and then we'll kind of just go over the impact more and kind of why the numbers are kind of shocking and what kind of happens to some of these other guys with the ripple effect from this. But as we led the show off last week, we had the news to come across, and we let you guys know at the end of the show that Trevor Lawrence has signed his new contract. Joe Burrow now is tied with Trevor Lawrence, or Trevor Lawrence, excuse me, is now tied with Joe Burrow for the highest annual contract of $55 million a year for quarterbacks. Not necessarily the most guaranteed money, not necessarily the most value in the total contract for a quarterback, but the most annual average, highest. Now that is separate from Justin Jefferson's record, who is still the record holder for non-quarterbacks for average annual salary. What's interesting about the deal, so there's only about 53 million or so that's through incentives, which is not a huge number in terms of what he could possibly not earn. But he also
No,
caught
it's
me
my
off
guy
guard
Roger
there.
Jackson. Keep going, man. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. But he's also got the 55 million, the signing bonus, the 200 million guaranteed. But surprisingly enough, that's not as much as Justin Herbert's deal that was just last year. He got 218 million guaranteed, but the annual number is much lower for Justin Herbert. And
Okay.
last year Trevor Lawrence, as much as the Jaguars, again had a decent season, he was only the 21st highest rated passer, which is I think where these the numbers a little eye popping, and why people that didn't expect the Jaguars to be the next one to the table to sign their quarterback.
Yeah,
Um,
but regardless of how, and I know it's a it was a disappointing end to the Jaguars season down the stretch. But let's face it, he got this deal because, quite frankly, he's the best they've had since what David Garrard.
I mean, yeah, I mean, if you really want to go to in terms of success, you got to go all the way back to Mark Brunell for me.
Brunell, I was going to, yeah.
And especially the way that team was built with Fred Taylor and Jimmy Smith. I mean, the similarities with this team with the wide receiving core and the running back. Um, they're going to have a solid team for years to come. And now they've locked up the quarterback position at what will be a very average number about 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah, pretty much. And but you know what? With them having won the division in 2021 and that comeback playoff win, in which, okay, like let's face it, like, yeah, he led the comeback, but I mean, if you average it out, he played an average game. He throws 4 picks in the first half. They run up this huge lead, right? The Chargers do.
Yeah.
Then he plays a near flawless second half. Well, I mean, if you average it out, it was an average game. Like it was a tale of two halves. He had this horrible first half. Second half was, elite or
And
near
then you
elite.
got that home momentum, and the away team starts getting a little jittery. Who knows if the result is the same if it's the other way around? But he did the job in the second half, like you said. But again, kind of an average game overall.
Yeah.
And when you compare it to who we thought may have been next, which Jordan Love, Purdy, obviously we already know was bookmarked for next offseason. He wasn't a discussion really, unless he was going to make a big fuss about that, and we'll touch on that in a little bit.
Uh-huh.
But that really we thought maybe Jordan Love was next, or Dak, or maybe even Tua, and this really not for so much for Tua, because Tua has a lot of risk he carries because of his injury history and the concussions. And I don't think this is going to push the Dolphins into 55 million for Tua. I don't think that's where you see his number end up. And the Dolphins have a strong argument why it shouldn't end up there. Statistically, when he's healthy, great quarterback, makes that team is all the difference when he's on the field and healthy. But the concussion history is obviously very scary, and that would be very scary for any team, not just the Dolphins. Any team, if he actually make it to free agency, that would be the discussion in the negotiation room. Is hey, we could do this, but we're gonna have a lot less guaranteed because we have this concussion, this neck injury, and so on and so forth.
Well, how about this? For size. Because he did stay healthy all last season. He did. He protected himself better. He was not injured. Maybe 2 seasons ago was just an anomaly. And he's still a young guy.
Yeah, and that's the obviously the things he's got going for him. I think for him to at least balance out some of that, we need another second healthy season for the agent to gain back some leverage on his side in terms of having the injury discussion. And trust
Uh-huh.
me, this is nothing new for NFL teams. NFL teams start doing this from day one when the guy's on their draft board and they're supposedly in love with the guy. But when it comes contract time, or right before we were picking him up, we're going to bump you down to the fifth round because we saw this little blimp. But wait, for the last 3 weeks, you've been, flirting with us really heavy and said we're second or third round material. And then on
Hmm.
draft day, you're fifth round material because they found a little blip. It's the same thing they'll do with Tua right now if, the contract negotiations continue to go on this offseason. I'm not sure he'll sign this offseason, the extension. I think he'll probably end up either being, right at the deadline, or he'll go into next offseason and they'll deal with it then. It doesn't seem to be a holdout situation with Tua. I think he understands he needs another consecutive healthy season, in my opinion.
He does. He does. And also getting them past the first round would also help matters as well. Do I think that he would get paid as much as Burrow or T Law? No. Because you still got to pay Tyreek Hill. You still eventually got to pay Waddle. You got a couple of defenders that you need to pay as well. So
And
this is just me.
Waddle's currently on the tail end of a newer extension. I believe there's 2 years left. Tyreek
Yeah,
Hill obviously got a little bit of new money coming from Kansas City, so those may be deals they need to restructure just to be able to sign to it.
exactly. Yeah, that's true. But also, it wouldn't help if they, well, not wouldn't help. It would help if they would take a page from their AFC East division rivals, the Patriots, and go in the Patriot way. You know, use that money to sign players and maintain a team.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what we touched about weeks ago with the restructures. How Tom Brady always took a little bit more upfront money, but a little less cap money, and they were able to keep the team together. And I think when these numbers keep growing, but I think the difference now is these TV deals are allowing these teams to be more comfortable with these high guarantees. And the other thing, and we've touched about it for the last couple of weeks with these new contracts, all 4 and 5 year deals. You're not seeing the long deals like Patrick Mahomes signed a couple of years ago, which I know has been restructured at this point. But
Right.
I don't think you'll ever see another 7-10 year deal like he had originally signed. He originally signed that, to me that was a hockey deal. You see that in hockey, 10 year deals.
Yeah.
Um,
And baseball, if you're Otani,
yeah,
and
it's
also
it's an anomaly for football. It's
yeah,
really an anomaly for football. So I think like like we said with these younger guys, taking that 3, 4, 5 year deal and setting yourself up for the potential of another big money deal, depending how this one works out. And for the Jaguars, in terms of dead money, they could probably stomach this for the 5 years with where the QB average salary will be 5 years from now.
yeah, yeah, very well. And then also, now you included an excerpt here mentioning that T Law's number actually hurts the Packers' leverage. If you could expand on that.
So, quietly, obviously, we've heard that, Jordan Love obviously signed his original extension. Rodgers was on his way out the door. The number's about 13.9. I believe he's due 14.5 this year, which still, based on what he's done, is obviously low given the market value. Um, there's been no clear sign from his camp that he won't hold out when the official camp starts. Now, he's been at the voluntary camp, so he's been at OTAs, but there's when the questions come up and been posed to his camp, there's been no direct answer on whether he will or will not hold out at the beginning of training camp. And I believe it does circle around this contract. And now that the Jaguars have kind of jumped the line here, there's no way you can't give Jordan Love 55 million.
Yeah,
There's the argument not only that I don't want to say that he's a better player, but for the last 2 years, and last year especially, he was obviously the more consistent quarterback. And if we're doing comparisons to Joe Burrow, I think Jordan Love's ceiling is a little bit higher than Trevor Lawrence's at this point.
yeah. No, I could agree. Now, his last one is and once again we're gonna bring up the favorite quarterback of the NFC, and that is quarterback Brock Purdy of the 49ers. So why no Purdy holdout?
Yeah, and one thing I see with Purdy, and he reminds me of the late round pick of the New England Patriots, Tom Brady, right? Carried himself very quietly. We never really heard of his contract discussions. They just got restructured, they got done, never really hit the news. I don't think just because of this, you won't see the Niners jump out and make a contract for Purdy this year because next year's his extension year. They can obviously do it if they wanted to, but there's really no. I don't think there's a motivation on either side based on obviously the low round pick, the elbow hit, injury. He was obviously healthy all of last year, but I think the Niners and Purdy kind of know another good year pushes his value even higher. And based on what Lawrence just did, Lawrence may have just handed Purdy $60 million, but I think no holdout because Purdy's carrying himself just like Tom Brady did. And
Yes.
what I would say he's doing is doing it kind of by the Brady book. Be quiet about it. You do it behind the scenes. If he is a little miffed about it, I don't think you'll ever hear about it. I think you'll see a deal done early next offseason when the season wraps up. Brock Purdy will probably be the first extension out the door. It
Hmm.
will be that $60 million number, and Brock Purdy will be your new highest paid NFL quarterback next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that being said, um, Brock Purdy, I don't think there's going to be a holdout also for operational reasons. You see, he was that close to knocking out Pat Mahomes in the biggest game. The 49ers are the odds on favorite to win the Super Bowl in 2024. You know, I think he's going to come out there focused. I think his teammates have pretty much all but let him know, like, dude, you're going to get the bag. Just stay healthy. Take us, back to the big game. If they win the Super Bowl, shoot, I would even go as far as saying 65 million.
And that you're right. The Super Bowl win might get him another five. Should it might give him another 10.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Or you
and,
know
and
what?
and the guaranteed money will definitely be. I think he'll obviously surpass Herbert. I'm not sure if we'll pass the Mahomes guarantee money. That will kind of depend on salary cap inflation next year. But then what could happen, and this is obviously speculatory. Purdy signs his deal. 2 or 3 weeks later, you could see Mahomes sign a new deal.
A new deal, yeah. And also, you know what? And I just thought about this, and maybe you can expound on this just a little bit before we go to our next topic, which is our primer for next week. What if Purdy signs 65 million a year, right? But he can stand to make more than that because you can always throw in incentives. Taking us to the playoffs would earn you this much. Taking us to the conference championship will earn you this much. Taking us to the Super Bowl will earn you this much. Winning another ring will get you
Super Bowl
this
win,
much.
yep.
So he actually could stand to earn more than that 65 million per year.
Yeah,
Just in
and I
incentives.
think I think with T. Lawrence's total number being 275, again, depending what the salary cap increase ends up being next year, I think you could see Brock Purdy's total number between 325 to 337.
Yeah. No, absolutely on that one. I can and it's crazy because I told people I was like he's going to get his money. And the criticism came about how he's more like Jimmy G than anything else and it's about the team around him. And I was like, I hear what you're saying, but we all
And
know the
I
name
think
of the game.
unfortunately any Kyle Shanahan quarterback is going to get that stigmatism, right? Just because he's been so successful with every quarterback he's put his touch on, from Robert Griffin, Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, the list just goes on and on. Then you go to the Shanahan line with his father and Elway. I mean, the family has just had such success with quarterbacks. I think whoever you bring in there, unfortunately, is going to get that stigmatism unless you're Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, and then, but you know what? And here was my biggest thing because I remember having this debate with John Shearer and JB in a group chat. And here was my thing: who else on the 49ers are you going to pay the big money to? McCaffrey
Who's
got
left
his
at this
bag,
point?
cool. You
McCaffrey got
know,
his. Kittle
McCaffrey
has
got
his two
his.
years ago. It looks like
Hmm.
Ayuk probably gets his in a month. Samuel got his, but he will probably be traded for getting his next year.
Exactly. So I mean, who? Jawan Jennings. Granted, had they won the game, I believe he would have won MVP.
And
Who on the
now that they,
defense?
in
Didn't
terms
Bosa get
of,
his money too?
yeah, they restructured Fred Warner. Dre Greenlaw was signed a couple of years ago. I mean, that team is intact through. I believe what they've set up essentially is the new guys they've brought in are all expiring close to next year or have voidable years to free up money for Brock Purdy. But this team is intact for the 49ers essentially through 2026, minus a few tweaks here and there. And like I said, I think the biggest tweak you're going to see is obviously Debo Samuel gets traded next offseason once Brandon Ayuk signs around 29 million a year in a couple weeks.
Yeah. No, I totally agreed. And so, with that being said, we'll go on to the beginning part of our next topic, and that is the NFL Sunday Ticket class action suit. So, part one, just want to address the case itself. The class action suit that will cover 2.4 million residential subs, 40,000 business subscribers spanning 2011 to 2022, and the suit claimed it was limited access by only offering out of market games on a satellite provider, restricted competition. If you can touch on that briefly.
And we talked about it in antitrust a couple of weeks ago with the big three, right? But this is
Right.
this is much different. because it's known that the NFL shops around their rights every 10 to 11 years. The last deal with DirecTV was struck in 2011. They were shopping a new deal around in 2022. Obviously, eventually, it ended up with Google and YouTube, and it stayed around the same price point. But there's rumors and circulations from ESPN saying they were going to offer it at a much lower price point and offer separate team packages, which I think it would be attractive to a lot of people. I know me personally, if when I was buying Sunday ticket, I was only buying it for one or two specific teams. Not that
Yep.
I'm not interested in the whole league, but I was trying to see specific out of market games. I think team by team packages is a good way to go, but it also that's a scary thing for certain sports, and we'll leave you with this, especially with baseball soft cap. If teams are allowed to individually sell their out of market games or their out of market rights, imagine how much money the Yankees, Mets, and other teams like that in baseball could have to spend now in the offseason compared to, say, the Vegas Athletics, who probably will not have a lot of people picking up an individual TV package.
Yeah. That's correct. Especially since the Athletics are due to play in Sacramento for what, the next 2 seasons.
Yes, sir.
Yep, absolutely. Well, that is part one of the NFL Sunday Ticket class action suit, and which is the case itself. And so stay tuned, where next week we will hit you with Sunday Ticket class action suit part two, the fallout from it. So for myself and Sean Russi, we are the brothers at Sports Business Insider, and we will see you all next week. Thanks for tuning in. Shout out to my guy Roger Jackson. Thanks for tuning in. Shout out to Bernadette, and also JB, John, JT, Jacob Christner. Everybody else, you know who we are. I got some AEW to watch. We'll see y'all next week. See ya.